Immigration is a fraught and emotional topic. Meaningful reform has eluded the U.S. for decades. But what happens if we try and strip away some of the emotion and take a look at immigration through the lens of economics? What can we learn? Zeke Hernandez is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. He joins us. Professor, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
When it comes to the economics of immigration, there is the big one, immigration and its effect on wages and jobs. So let's start there. Does immigration reduce wages?
The short answer is no. When you have these newcomers, they're also growing the economy. So it's not just the supply of workers that increases, but the demand for other things also increases, which means the economic pie is bigger, which is why there's not zero-sum competition. The other reason is that someone who's worried about immigrants taking jobs or lowering wages is often assuming that an immigrant worker is identical to a native worker. But they're not. For example, we know that immigrants take and want different jobs, for example, in farms, in factories, in construction that natives simply won't do.
Some people will say it's not that natives won't do jobs. It's just that, we have to pay them more to get them to do those jobs. So we don't actually need immigrants to do them.
Yeah, I understand. Again, we have no evidence to support that. And in many sectors, we do have very clear evidence that natives simply will not do the jobs. So Michael Clemens has a study looking at North Carolina farm jobs in 2011. In that year, because of the aftermath of the financial crisis that North Carolina was still suffering, there were 500,000 unemployed North Carolinians. And there were 6,000 job openings in North Carolina farms. Out of those 6,000 jobs, there were 268 applications from native workers. Of those, all were hired. 163 of them showed up to work, and only 7 finished the harvest. Right. So that's pretty stark.
Is there an economic need for immigrants? Or more specifically, where is there an economic need for immigrants?
So here's some facts. Immigrants are 18% of the labor force, okay? But they are 45% of workers in household services, 36% in clothing manufacturing, 33% in agriculture, 32% in hospitality. Where you see sectors that immigrants are disproportionately represented in the workforce, those are the kinds of jobs where we really need immigrants.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams recently said New York would have to cut its budget to accommodate the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on housing an influx of migrants. Presumably many of these people do end up working, generating economic activity, paying taxes even, but they also use social services like the mayor was complaining about. So what about that situation? How does that net out?
There is evidence showing that every first-generation immigrant, on average, costs the state $1,600. But when you go to the second and third generation, that is the children and grandchildren of those immigrants, states collect a lot more than that $1,600. They collect $3,000 across the 2 generations. So fair point, but the wrong conclusion would be to say, therefore, don't allow immigrants in, because in the long run, the economies of these states would be worse off.
Zeke Hernandez is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. His new book, out in June, is called The Truth About Immigration: Why Successful Societies Welcome Newcomers. Professor Hernandez, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.